everyone. Welcome back to our Citizens Crime Watch podcast. I am your host, Joe Bermudez. As you can see, we're back in the world of Zoom land here. We're not, well, not all of us are here in our little studio, but we figured we'd carry this another month here into Zoom because we are honored and privileged to have a heck of a guy, I like to tell him, but he's a good friend of mine, but he is a dedicated individual when it comes to protecting our children. And the work that he does is really unparalleled. But we're, again, like I said, we're very honored to have Steve Daley here. He is the CEO and Executive Director of radKIDS. Welcome, Steve. Thank you for being here.
Joe, it's an honor. Citizen Crime Watch is part of our family, and I'm very excited to be able to share with you. And yeah, as you said, we're friends, so we'll just get busy and start sharing what we can do for kids. And I'm excited to be in support of Citizen Crime Watch and everything that they always do. So it is really an honor to be here.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So, as I said, Steve's a friend of mine, so I know a lot about Steve, taking his classes, courses, certification stuff. But I always like to give my guests a little opportunity just to kind of introduce themselves, a little background, so our guests, our viewers, know who our guest is, and they just don't take my word for it.
Well, I can do that, Joe. That's really not a problem. Basically, he doesn't want to tell you everything he knows, which is a good thing because we don't really want to do that. No, all joking aside, my name's Steve Daley. I am the founder and current executive director, CEO of radKIDS, which only means that if anything goes wrong, they blame me. The radKIDS Personal Empowerment Safety Organization is found at radkids.org. There's plenty of information, and of course, we'll plug that again a couple of times. But I founded this organization after a 21-year law enforcement career. I was a police officer in Florida, in Largo, Florida, years ago, late 70s, early 80s. That's a long time ago. And then I went back to the north and was a police officer in Massachusetts. And started in Maine before that. So I was able to do quite a bit in my law enforcement career, and I enjoyed it immensely. I went all the way chief, up and down, back, depending on the situation at the time, and kept moving. I worked in a small city. I worked in a larger city in Largo, and then I worked in college and law enforcement for many years. College law enforcement I liked a lot because they had resources, and I worked at MIT, which was an interesting place in all by itself because I always used to say the young people there would either save the world or blow it up. I wasn't which way whether they was going to be, but it was a fun place to work. But in my law enforcement career, in what led me here, I became a trainer of police officers, a physical skill trainer, trained in self-defense, personal safety, use of force, if you want to use their language, as well as firearms. And I did that for 25 years and trained thousands of officers all around the nation. I have 5 friends who sadly lost their life in the line of duty. So that was a very big commitment to me and a mission. I trained enough young people to take my place. And then during my law enforcement career, they sent me to a women's self-defense class called Rad Systems. And I did not want to go. I'll be real honest with you, Joe. I think you and I have shared this story. They kind of made me go. I wasn't the boss, and they said, "You're going." And I went, "Okay." And I actually tried to get thrown out the first day just because I didn't want to do it. But it changed my life in the first hour of the day. I'll never forget the founder of that organization saying, in the average woman's life today, and sadly it's true today, the average woman will fear something during the day. And I couldn't understand that as a guy because my focus was protect others. And I actually believed at that time that I could do it, that I could protect everybody in my life. But I remember in the class, he said, "So where is your significant other now?" And I thought of my wife and I said, "I'm not next to her, so how am I supposed to help her?" And so I was like, wake up time. You need to pay attention a little bit more. The best thing we can do to keep people safe is to teach them how to be safe themselves and empower them with that ability, with their own skills and critical thinking. And we'll talk a little bit about that, how we got to kids. But I trained thousands of their instructors around the country. And I ran into the same problem that I ran into in law enforcement, which I'll give you the reason why I do all this in just a minute. But in law enforcement, you show up late. As Joe knows, a lot of times you show up after the crime has occurred. His focus was prevention as well. That's how we became friends. But you show up after the crime, and that never really settled with me. It was like I wanted to make a difference. That's why I was that young officer years ago. Why do you want to be a police officer? Because I want to help people. And when you show up after victimization, you can help, but you can't take away the victimization. And so that always kind of hung a hat on me. And then I got involved with women's safety, and I'm teaching women. And the problem is that most of the women that came to the class had already been hurt. And I'm like, someone had hurt them either emotionally or physically, or even more violently than that. They've been hurt, and they were survivors in a process that just wasn't made me comfortable. And I remember teaching women and them saying to me, a few of them saying to me, well, why would someone do that? Why would someone hurt me? And there is no why in violence. And the truth is that there are good, and as we teach children, bad people. And so it was like, my thought process was, well, I'm late again. So what do we do? So basically, I have the mind of a 5-year-old, which Joe knows. And so it was like, let's go to the kids. So spent about 4 years in research, looking at what was out there. I was in DARE when it was just years ago. And so I saw all the educational elements come up, but I was looking for something that was more skill-based, more empowerment-based, and that was more holistic. So we developed a program called the radKIDS Personal Empowerment Safety Education Program and started it. Yep, there we go, which we work with Citizens Crime Watch on and distributing in the Miami-Dade area, which is fantastic. Also, Miami-Dade Sheriff's Department, we work with them and the police department. So there's a unit out there. Not enough people yet. We're going to keep working on that, but we're also want to get in the schools down there. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But women led me to kids. Kids is what we're going to put most of our focus on. But what really started me years ago is people always wanted to know. We've been doing this for 25 years. We have trained over 9,000 instructors, Joe being one of them. We've trained over 400,000 children together, all of these instructors around the country. We've had over 200 saves from abduction and human trafficking. We've had over 50,000 sexual assault saves. And we've been building zero victimization schools for the last few years. And we've done so in about 7 states. So we're still trying to improve every day and get in that process, but been very dedicated. Was on America's Most Wanted in 2002. That's how long we've been doing it with John Walsh, because we were the program that stops abduction. But as I said, kind of just insinuated that we actually stop violence, period. So whether it's bullying, school safety, home safety, out and about safety, abduction prevention, all the bad words we don't want to talk about, sexual assault, which is rape, and violence against that. And we'll talk a little bit about that, because obviously that's where we've had most of our success. But it all started in way back when I was 23 years old as a young police officer in Florida. And one night I got a call from the dispatcher to respond to a house where a mother is screaming, my child, my child, my child. That's all we got. So I went immediately. I at 23 years old, I thought I could save the world all by myself. It wasn't an ego, but I loved going to work as a police officer. I loved trying to help people. So at that stage, I thought I could help everybody. So that night, everything changed, because I responded to this house and the woman was hysterical, yelling and screaming. And I always like to make the scenario, it's really hard to stop someone who's really upset, and you kind of just got to wait it out. It's not like an old television movie where you can actually hit them or something. So it's like you got to kind of calm it down. So I'm trying to calm her down and find out what's going on and assess the situation. And my backup shows up, and I'm very happy because now he can deal with her and I can go solve this problem. So that I'm looking for a little girl. That's all I know. So I go into the house and I clear the dining room and the living room area because I can see it all. No flashlight, just walking, because I don't know if there's a violent person in the house. I have no idea what's going on. So I go into the house and I'm looking around, going, police officer, identifying myself in case I have to respond as a police officer. Still don't know what the call is. So it's all quiet though. The only thing I can hear outside is the mother. And so I'm clearing the house and I clear the living room and I get into the hallway and I look down the hallway and there appears to be a small child. It was dark, so I couldn't really see, but there was a silhouette of a smaller person holding something. It looked like a teddy bear or something. And as I approached, I was like, I'm a police officer. Hello. Nothing. No response. Nothing. I take a couple of steps down. There were doorways there. So I wanted to make sure I was safe. So I'm going slow, and I'm still saying, hello, police officer, with no response. About 3 steps into the hallway, a car must have went by because there was a light that came in and shined briefly on this child. And I could see them that they were a child, but I got distracted because they kind of glittered. And in that, what I mean by glitter is they shine and distract me. So I stopped for a second. Of course, that seemed like a long time, Joe, as you know. And I stopped for a second, but I continued, and I took a couple more steps, and then I could identify why she was glittering. I could see a small child now who was covered head to toe in blood, and it was fresh blood. And I hadn't seen that until I got closer. What amazed me is she was not saying anything. She was not crying. She was just looking at me. I bent down on my knee as they taught me to do, because I was on the midnight shift and we could be a little louder.
Down to their level.
Yes, get down to their level. So I got down on the knee and I looked this little girl in the eye and I said, "Are you okay?" to start a conversation. Because again, she's not saying anything. She looked right at me and she said, "Where were you?" And I went, "On patrol," because I thought when I was that age that I had to answer every question that ever came at me. She didn't hesitate. When I said on patrol, she said, "You're supposed to protect me, and mommy's boyfriend hurt me." And my call that night was mommy woke up, couldn't find her boyfriend, who was now beating, hurting, and sexually assaulting her daughter. She screamed at the coward. He ran into the night. I got the call, and I was going to fix it. And that was the night that I learned I couldn't fix it. And that little girl stayed in my mind, and it shifted my focus in my career to how to help people before. And I tried quite a bit through that process to find it, like I said, DARE and many other programs that were educational, but not empowering and skill-based enough for what I was looking for. Skill-based was the most important. When you're not there, what could you do for that little girl? Because she taught me that night, it said protect and serve on my cruiser. But I could protect when I was there, just like parents can protect their children when they're there. But when you're not there, who's going to protect? And so that little girl became my focus. And many years later, I had the opportunity to start the investigation into radKIDS. And to end that story very quickly and get back on track and actually let Joe get a word in edgewise, I will say that 2 years into radKIDS development, I met a young girl. I was in Provo, Utah, teaching an instructor's class, and with a deputy sheriff and his wife, who were the main trainers. And they got a phone call in the middle of the training and said, "One of your radKIDS just escaped." And they said, one of the mom who was there, who was working with her husband, said, "I'll be right back." And she took off to find out what was going on. And I continued to teach. And she came back at the end of the day, and I'll never forget, because she walked into the room and she literally looked like she was glowing. She was so happy. And I'm like, "Everything okay?" And she's like, "Yeah." And then she goes, "Do you want to meet the girl?" And I went, "Okay." But as I share with everyone, to be honest, inside, I was like, I expected to see a victim. I expected to meet a child who got away, fantastic, but had already been hurt because someone attacked her. So we go to the call, and I actually worked with Ed and Elizabeth Smart back then, that long time ago. We worked for many years together, but it was early in our relationship. And I said, I'm going to call Ed because there'll be a celebrity go meet this girl than not just me. So I went to, we met at the house, and the instructor knocked on the door, and this little girl comes to the door. And Joe, you've seen this video on Candy. This little girl comes to the door, and we teach the children not to come to the door. So I'm like, oh, this isn't going well. But the point is she knew who we were. She opens the door to us and says, "Hello to Miss Allison." We enter, we get invited in, and I'm looking for a child that's been hurt. I'm still looking for, I figured this must be another child. I'm looking for the child hurt. And Allison says, "Candy, this is Mr. Steve, and he started radKIDS. And Steve, this is Candy." And I go, "Candy?" And she's looking at me, bright eyes, and I go, "Are you okay?" Same question I asked that girl many years ago. She looked right at me, and she said, "Yeah, he should have picked somebody else, don't you think?" And I went, "Oh, my Lord. Oh, my Lord." Everything cleared. And since then, I spent 25 years building this organization, meeting people like Joe along the way, giving me another tool for their toolkit. And there's nothing like the radKIDS Personal Empowerment Safety Education Program for giving your child the skills you want them to have if they ever meet bad or evil people who are trying to hurt them. And that's our goal. That's what we do.
And that's awesome. I mean, that's like, have you heard your stories? I love listening to your stories. That's just justification on how this program works and how great this program is. Um, you know, I want to thank you for sharing that story. I know that's always hard for you to share that story. We've talked about that in the past, and I've heard it a few times, and I still get chills when I hear it of how you came about to this. And I think it's similar to what a lot of us go through in the crime prevention world when we get involved and these programs and stuff, because we start off, like you said, we start off as I'm going to save the world as a cop, and then you kind of start, it eats away at you because you're getting there, like you said, after the fact. You're getting there when all these people have already been victimized. So and that's kind of something that what happened with me is I found this world where I can say, you know what? Yeah, I can make a difference as a cop by putting bad guys in jail. But, and I say this when I teach all the time, I said, I would rather be the guy that comes and talks to you for an hour and keeps you from being a victim than being the officer that comes and has to deal with you all night because you were victimized. So kudos to you, Steve, for doing that, getting involved and taking that leap of faith and starting this program, because it's given us, like you said, it's given us the tools and stuff to go out there and help people and help them not be victims. And well, like you said, like you just empower them to know that they don't have to be a victim. So.
Well, it's as you know, and as you just shared, I was on the midnight shift, so I was putting a lot of people in jail, and a lot of angry people. At 2:00 in the morning, you don't find a lot of calm people. They're sleeping. The other ones are out doing things that are happening. But I was that officer like you that spent time. I remember working the roughest neighborhoods and enjoying it because I kind of grew up, as you know, I grew up in one of my parts of my story is I was in a youth group. They call them gangs now. So a little different. So I was in an inner city environment and had to survive. And being in a survival mindset, I think many people and your listeners, survival mindsets are very different than an everyday mindset. A survival mindset, there's no right and wrong. There's only survive. And people always wonder why people can commit crimes and why sometimes they just have no remorse about it. Well, that's because they're not in a state of being able to think about it. They're trying to survive. And in their mind, whether it's real or not, they're in survival mode. And I used to sit at domestics with kids, and I'll never forget it. Going back to trying to make that difference that you just made me think about. And the sergeant, we'd have a domestic, someone would be removed, maybe both parties would be removed, and the children are there. And the children don't know what's going on. And so I was like, and we look like the bad guy as the police officer trying to stop the adults from hurting each other, right? So I would sit down with the kids and have a conversation with them, and kind of talk to them and kind of see what they were feeling, and couldn't fix it, but I could certainly listen to them. And that's where I started to learn things. But I remember my sergeant saying, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm trying not to come back in 15 years." And he went, "Oh." So prevention, again, our bond that brought us together, prevention is so hard to prove what you prevented because it didn't happen, which is why they keep telling us we don't have any funding, right? They're like, well, you can't prove it.
Give me the numbers. Give me a number.
I love to say that I'd love to say that we've had over 400,000 children participate in the radKIDS curriculum over time. And I could say we're 100% effective because we've been blessed not to have lost a child who's taken this program. They've been taken by some predatory violence, right. But that's not 100% true because I don't reach out to all 400,000 kids and find out. But I do know that the door is always open, and any child goes to the radKID or family that goes into the radKIDS program becomes part of our extended family, and that the doors are open for conversations, resources. Matter of fact, we've been doing it so long, Joe, there's almost 100 radKIDs that are now adult instructors. So they're I keep asking them when they're going to take my job because I'm like, I'm ready to give it to you. So, but it's kind of a neat thing. And so that's what
radKIDs. You know what? I like to say that, you said 400,000 you can't cut, but to me, I say that's 400,000 people you gave a fighting chance to.
Exactly. And that's really all we can do. The biggest part of people want what having the ability to solve a problem or critical thinking skills, problem solve, whatever, having the ability in a high risk situation, fight or flight situation, to solve a problem is a blessing because it gives you opportunity rather than just consequences. And radKIDS provides that opportunity, as many of the education programs that we share and that you guys share at Citizens Crime Watch, they provide an opportunity for you to think about it along with respond. But the activity-based curriculum in radKIDS actually doesn't just tell kids what to do, how most of us grew up. It actually trains them how to respond. They think they're playing, but we're actually setting up their brain at fight or flight to not freeze and to be able to respond with a mindset of those 3 radKID rules, which I might as well give you now because once you know, Joe, once I get started, I get going. The 3 radKID rules, principles behind radKIDS that we teach and that you teach and Citizen Crime Watch teaches is that to every child that no one has the right to hurt them. You and I grew up with stranger danger. Many people on this who are listening to this grew up with stranger danger. Stranger danger is a good start, but it doesn't really work because most of the time our children are hurt by people they know who have access to them. Yep. So by changing that to no one has the right to hurt you, it actually makes it much more realistic for our world today. And it allows the personal boundaries to begin based on anyone hurting me. I have my own value. You don't get to. We give them permission to do that. And it's all based on self-value and self-worth, not right or wrong, because right or wrong, depending on the neighborhood we live in, is a little subjective. So a self-value and self-worth is no one gets to hurt me, and the child gets to decide that boundary, which they teach us, which I remember starting radKIDS all the way back. And I went into it, traditional crime prevention. I'm going to tell them what they need to know, give them the facts, do's and don'ts, all that good stuff. And I remember a little girl in California looking at me and going, I already know there is bad people. And I'm like, okay. She goes, what I need to know is what do I do with them? And I'll never forget that, because that day I started listening to the children and I heard that same statement in little different forms, in different places all over the country. What kids want to know is what to do. They need that permission to do it, but they also want to know what to do because instinctively we don't want to be hurt. So when it starts with no one has the right to hurt me, that kind of gives them power. And that's a good start. Now with that gift, if no one has the right to hurt you, then radKIDS principle number 2 is that they don't have the right to hurt anyone else. Kind of a golden rule for us old people, Joe. You know what I mean? So it's like we understood you treat people the way you're treated. So, but this is really kind of a general guideline is so they don't hurt, they don't bully, they don't hurt other kids. When you have skills, the more skills, the less likely you're involved in danger, but it also the less likely you're going to use them on somebody. So it changes everything. And when you say no one has the right to hurt you first, and then you say, okay, so you don't get to hurt anybody else, it kind of makes sense. But then we add including yourself because they're children. So we're going to talk about we're going to talk about seatbelt safety and car safety, and those are the benign ones. But what about drug prevention? It's not about right or wrong in drugs. It's we don't hurt ourselves and drugs can change us. And radKIDS has a whole model on that that's actually working against fentanyl and opioids and things like that now, which is really important. And so, but it's really not based on right or wrong. When I was a DARE officer years and years ago, I know the curriculum has evolved, but years and years ago, it was like I stood up there in my uniform and I said, don't do drugs, they're bad for you, and then also we'll arrest you. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, time out. That's not what I meant. So, but it was like, it really wasn't that way, but it also DARE, I will say this about DARE because I'm placing my heart for DARE forever. I make a joke about it, but not really. The DARE program has evolved a little bit, but most importantly, it put law enforcement in a positive place in schools and is in a partnership, which are now SROs and community policing officers, and that's kind of neat. Off track, back to my thing. Principle number 1, radKIDS, no one has the right to hurt you because you're special and you count. Principle number 2, you don't have the right to hurt anybody else, including yourself, which also covers suicide prevention later in life, drug prevention, all the safety things, poison safety, gun safety, internet safety. There's a whole lot. I mean, a very holistic approach to it, as you know. But here's where everything changes. Rule number 2 is you don't have the right to hurt anybody else, including yourself, unless. That unless word is very powerful because it shifts opportunity to our children and choice. And unless someone is hurting you, and if they're hurting you, you have every right to stop them. Yeah, to stop. That's right, Joe, from class. Stop them, right? So every right to stop them, and kids like that too, to stop them. Of course, we put them in a whole stance and everything, but the part of that stop is power. That's power. Stopping the bad guy. That little girl said to me, "I don't know what to do with them." Stop them. So the next question is how. And what radKIDS actually does is we teach them how to stop people from hurting them, whether it's a bully or an adult, or in the process, we give them the physical skills to do it, to try to stop it, not fight, stop. Now, a couple things are real important in that area is that stopping someone is legal in every state. In Florida, this isn't a discussion, but all over the country, sometimes it is a little discussion about, do you have the right to defend yourself? Reasonable self-defense is stopping someone from hurting you. So that word is very critical, because sometimes we think reasonable self-defense is whacking them after they hit me. That's not reasonable self-defense. Or hitting them back, or getting even. That's not self-defense. Self-defense is stopping someone at the time from hurting you. And in radKIDS, everything is stun and run. It's to escape and not escalate, de-escalate the situation so our children don't get hurt and get away. And that is the process that we teach them. And so it falls under legal. It's not my opinion. Everybody has the right, so why don't we teach them? And so we give the kids that skills. Now we go this far, and Joe, you remember this, but we don't teach self-defense in radKIDS. We teach physical resistance to violence. And people go, well, you're just making fancy words. No, we're teaching kids physically how to stop someone from hurting them, which is legal.
Yeah, and let me tell you, that's one of the great things about this program and how you have it set up. You know, this is one of the obstacles we have when we try maybe getting into a school, and when you first sit down with the principal and you start teaching, talking about what the curriculum is, and we'll get into a little bit how this your program is different than a lot of the other drug prevention, safety prevention programs, stuff like that. But I like to tell it, because the first thing is when you start going over what we're going to teach them, you see the eyes open up a little bit. You're going to teach them to fight? No. You're going to teach them to beat somebody up? No. We're going to teach them to stop someone from hurting them. That's it. If someone's doing something to them, we're going to teach them how to protect themselves by stopping it and getting away and going and telling someone, going and telling a trusted adult what's happening. If they see somebody else getting hurt, someone being bullied, how to intervene and stuff like that to stop it from happening. Yeah, you see, you've ingrained in me. I threw my hands up there. You stop them from doing it. But that is one of the great things about this program, is that you're able to I don't want to say morph it, but that you're able to convey that message that we're not trained. This is not Steve's dojo. You're not going to be a black, and that's the first thing we've done. We're not putting black belts out there, and self-defense experts. We're giving these kids, so like you said, a little bit of few life skills that they can file away in the brain. So when something happens, they don't freeze. And
it's based on self-value and self-worth. So that first part it's not about right or wrong. That's the first part. It's based on, you don't have the right to hurt me. It's based on that principle, right? And I have the right to stop you. Instinctively, our brain wants to be safe. The reptilian part of our brain, or the instinctive response, whatever name you want to put on it, that basically is where fight or flight is. And fight or flight is what most people understand. Dr. Cannon, American Journal of Physiology, 1914. So at least I know where I took it from. So fight or flight is really an instinctual response. But what most people, as we've talked about before, and what most people I think will agree on who are listening to this, is most people freeze. And the reason they freeze instead of respond is because cognitively, we put all this stuff in their heads of what's supposed to happen. But the world doesn't work that way. So you're having a perfect day when you meet the bad person, and all of a sudden you have to respond. And what happens is we have all these expectations and rules. And what happens is we freeze. The adrenaline is pumped in our body, but instead of being used in a positive way, it actually freezes us up. Some people respond a lot quicker. Some people respond a lot slower. But if we take it all out, they get to respond instinctively to the threat that they recognized. And instead of being afraid, they respond with power. And that power starts from the cognitive brain understanding how to work with the instinctive brain. And we do that with not only principle number 3, which ties it all together, which you led into very well, is the first one is no one has the right to hurt you. Okay, good. No one has. If I accept that as my personal boundary, not words, is my personal boundary. No one has the right to hurt me. That's value, because I count. I'm somebody. I'm special. And every kid is special. Every kid is special. As you know, I like the ones that everybody goes, they're possessed. I go, those are the ones I want, because those are the ones that are really trying to lead, but they're not sure which way to go. And they're the bullies in the elementary school. Most of the bullies in the elementary school are only bullying because they're getting their self-value and self-worth by taking it from someone else. And this is so old now, but I've tried to use this reference because it is Florida, and you do have Harry Potter world there. But if you can remember the story in Harry Potter, the mentors, they take the life out of you. And that's what a bully tries to do, is they try to take your value and your self-esteem to build up theirs. But it's weak and it's dark. It's like the dark side of the Force, Luke, if I was to reference another movie. And Joe knows I always reference movies. So
that's why we get along. We throw out the little movies here and there.
That's how we learn. We just go to the movies and we learn something. Yeah. So, and hopefully you laugh a little bit too. But the third rule is probably the most important principle in radKIDS, is that if a child who takes the program has ever been hurt before, someone hurt them, or since they're now a rad kid, anyone tries from this day forward, rad kids know it's not your fault when someone hurts you. It's actually theirs, which is the critical component in starting to heal after you've been victimized. Our society has created some challenges to understanding victimization and survivor. And I am 100% a survivor person, although I have a very long story and a life experience of being victimized in many different cases. But I'm nobody's victim, because anybody who hurt me, it wasn't my fault. Doesn't matter where I am, doesn't matter what I'm doing. As long as they're the ones hurting me, they're the ones who chose to hurt me, and it doesn't belong to me. So I can tell and keep telling until someone helps me. And that really changes the process in their whole life, because when you put those three rules together, those are way beyond personal boundaries. They're actually life skills and mental health wellness preparation to stop that victimization, because you can't guarantee somebody won't hurt them or hurt you. But what you can do is respond to that with power rather than fear and blame. And that goes back to another great point for those listening to the podcast, for parents. I use that word expectation. And a couple of years ago, I published an article on expectation versus empowerment. Because you and I have raised children, Joe, during this era where empowerment was everything. You were empowered to ride a bike. You're empowered to ride a horse. You're empowered to do this. That word became so overused. But what empowerment really means is permission, context, and skill equals personal empowerment. In other words, those three tools give ownership to that skill to somebody else. And I think that's really important. Expectations, the way most of us were raised, and which is what we'll model with our children, is that the do's and don'ts, the expectations that we have based on family values, based on faith values, all valuable. But when you tell a child what your values and expectations are, they only have two outcomes. The first being they can comply. And many parents are happy if I tell them and they do it, I don't care about the rest. The problem is if you're not there, who's going to tell them? And who's going to help them think? And who's going to help them process the decision? Because they may kind of like the idea, but it could be dangerous, right? So the question is, who's going to help them do that? So when we do the do's and don'ts, it's dangerous. There's a time to say don't, absolutely. But it's dangerous to do that because our children from 2 to 11 want to please us. I know everybody hearing this doesn't probably believe that every day, but they do want to please us. But after that, they start to please their peers. So those personal boundaries and those three rules I just gave you need to be in place so that a child can actually make their decisions on self-value and self-worth and have the power to respond in those situations, right?
It gives that base. You have to establish that base for them to grow and be able, like you said, you set these boundaries so that they know, you make good choices, make smart choices.
Well, they make it based, it's not on right or wrong. It's based on me. It's based on, right. It's based on my values. And most people are good, believe it or not. The reality is victimization turns our lives. And sometimes it turns our path into a different direction. Now, in my youth group, if I didn't have someone intervene in my life and change that experience, I probably wouldn't be here today. I'd probably be in jail or I'd be dead because life was what it was. It was in survival mode. It was angry. You see a lot of that today. Anger doesn't help anybody. But let me go back to the expectation versus empowerment thing, just one way to clear it up, because I keep wandering in 10 different directions. But in expectations, do's and don'ts have compliance. But the other part that makes it more scary is they also, in the mind of a child, have failure. So it's not do or don't. It's I did it, everybody's happy. I didn't do it, but let me give you an example. Don't talk to strangers. You tell your child don't talk to strangers. Someone talks to them, they're very nice to them. That's what bad people do, and then turn bad. And all of a sudden they get hurt. Will your child come back and tell you after you told them not to? Because there's two things going on there. There's the one, I'm going to get in trouble. That's minor. The second one is they'll be mad at me. My parents will be disappointed in me. And so I think that's a point we can all take from this is instead of do's and don'ts, maybe we can ask our children, how can you handle this? Now, you don't need to scare kids. You actually prepare them by what's going on in the world. So say you're driving through the neighborhood and say, okay, that looks unsafe over there. How would you do that? Well, I'd stay away from that. I'd go this way. How would you walk home this way? That's a different process versus do's and don'ts. Like do it because I said so, don't do it. And both you and I have law enforcement experience, military experience. The reality is sometimes there is a do and a don't, but the best way is to think your way out of it, to have the best weapon we can have, period, is our brain, is our process thinking, because you can get yourself out of a lot of things. And I used to say when I was a young police officer, training police officers, I would go in front of the academy today and I'd have 50 recruits in front of me. And I'd say, I started every fight I was in probably in the first 2 years because I thought I was in charge of everybody because I had to solve things and be bossy. And I got knocked down a few times for that. And I said, I'm going to try to teach you how to do that. I'm going to try to teach you how not to cause that. But some of you will have to learn the hard way. But our kids shouldn't learn the hard way. They should learn through power and opportunity, not fear and failure. Because fear and failure is part of that process that keeps us down and doesn't lift us up. And in radKIDS, that just means that radKID is a cool kid that doesn't let anybody hurt him. That's all it means. And to them, it is those three principles become their boundaries. No matter what situation they're living in or what community, you can actually take power yourself. And that permission part of that power is by the rules. The context is in danger in life, which could be based wherever they live. Certain parts of the Miami-Dade area are higher risk than other parts of the area. The kids are in tougher economic situations. The risks are higher all over the place. It's not just Miami-Dade, it's everywhere. We've taught radKIDS in Compton years ago. I just got back from LA again. So you can be in a city environment, and you can also be out in Minnesota or Utah where there's nothing but beautiful, not a lot going on, but there's enough people to still hurt each other. And the time has come.
The danger's there everywhere. So
the time has come to break that cycle of violence and victimization. And the only way to do that is to give the power to those who need it, and the opportunity and the education and the tools. And one of my favorite other parts that people always go is, well, if you teach them about the bad things in the world, then they get scared. And that's actually the opposite. The truth is, if you empower a child how to deal, and I answer that kid's question that I talked in the beginning that says, I need to know what to do with them. If we help them do that, it actually gives them power, keeps their innocence longer, and they believe in a better opportunity than when people are lying to them or victimizing them or hurting them, which is a process that everyone has to heal. Everyone has a story. You and I both have our stories. Everyone you've ever met has their story. I learned a long time ago, everybody's got a story. I always tell everybody, we're about 40 minutes into this podcast or maybe even longer. I said, you're a survivor of just listening to me for the last 40 minutes. See, you have a story. Everybody's got a story. And what we want to do is turn those stories powerful and realize that tomorrow's a new opportunity. Later's another opportunity. That doesn't mean we ever forget what happened to us, but we can put it in its proper place. And to do that, we have to feel safety, which is why I stole everything from Maslow's theory of hierarchy. You know this, Joe, from the training. People, where did this come from? But, well, I believe some of it came from God, to be honest with you. I believe that it makes sense to that level, to your family and your faith, and we don't hurt each other. But the Maslow's theory of hierarchy, the first one's food, right? We got to have food. And if we don't have food, we can't think, we can't function, we can be sick, all the things that happen. We've gotten better in our schools across the nation, and we are feeding them. We can talk about what we're feeding, but we are feeding. We even feed during summers, and we know areas. We're doing good with food. better with food. But the safety part, we're failing miserably in our schools. And we can segue into that a little bit if you want, is that, as you know, radKIDS creates the safest schools in the country under our zero victimization model, which is completely different than what everybody does. And matter of fact, one of our models is up in Alachua County, Florida, which is our leading model in the country. They've been running radKIDS holistically in their curriculum, because it's not just a program. You guys provide it, but we're working on getting it into those schools. It actually is a curriculum standard that meets in elementary health and PE in all 50 states, including Florida. So the reality is this can be taught right in school. So that all these life skills can actually be taught in school, and at that same time make the school safer. When every kid's a rad kid and has those 3 rules, here's what's happened anecdotally. I'm now working with scientists, but basically I've been doing it a long time, and I built schools in Texas, South Carolina, Maine, North Carolina, all different places. Florida is the key place where every kid becomes a rad kid. And here's what happens in areas that need this, attendance goes up. In the areas of Texas, attendance went up 25% after every kid in 1,100 kids in an elementary school. After every kid had rad kids, attendance went up. The reason it went up is because, sadly, the school was now safer than some of the places they would be during the day. So down on the border of Mexico and Texas, even before what's currently going on now, it was dangerous enough. And so school should be safe, in my opinion, and it made it safer. So the kids went to school. For administrators, they like that because they get more money, but based on the head of the school. So that's one process. The second process is bullying dropped 85%.
Wow.
Nobody could do that. Now I'm working with scientists to prove that number, but it was proved by the actual fact of what it's doing. Anecdotally, we didn't do a test. Yeah. So and here's my favorite part that I'm still waiting to prove, which is why we've recently modified our curriculum and updated it after all these years, is that we want academic achievement to rise as well. And that there's research on that all this will happen if the school is safe, but there's very few opportunities to make a universal culture and climate in that school that is safe, where kids, you have to do it through the eyes of kids and then incorporate the adults. And I just taught teachers last week in Alachua County, and I'd love to ask educators this, and you should ask those of you listen who have your teachers, ask your teachers and principals if they're in charge of their students at the school. And I love what they always go, yeah, I'm in charge. And then I go, no, you're not. There's 25 kids in your class. You're not in charge of them. If they want to take you, it's 25 minions. It's over. I don't care if they're kindergartners. So they all laugh. And I go, now let me change the word. Are you responsible? And most educators today feel responsible to the kids and to the school. That's different how you handle it, rather than being bossy or in charge. Responsible, we work together. In charge sometimes is a control factor. And we're not in control of anybody except ourselves. And the kids can learn that. And then if you support that environment, it changes the entire culture. And I can focus on learning rather than behavior matters, developmental matters, and things like that have especially increased since COVID. So again, ranting on and on, Joe. I don't know if you have any specific questions to get me back on tap.
Well, what I wanted to get into too is, we touched about here and there. I think radKIDS, like, again, I give you the kudos time and time again. It's an amazing program. I love it. I think it is something that complements a lot of the other programs that we have out there now. Former DARE guy, that, the programs that we have out there teaching the kids, when you start with officer friendly from when they're tiny, and
there you go.
Through all that kind of stuff. But just to give a little background, we don't have the full week to train everybody here, but what's different in radKIDS? How does it, because I want folks to know what makes this so special, why it complements this, is because you have the educational component in how we touch upon the different topics you talked about, and then you have the physical skills portion of it. If you, I guess, touch upon that a little bit.
Well, as you know, that's the hardest question. We've known each other for a few years now, and I've spent now many years, over 20, almost 25 years. And actually, it's our 25th anniversary, so I have to say 25 years, I guess. Looking for got milk. What's the quickest answer to that question? And here's what I have now. What is the difference between radKIDS and any of the other programs that are out there to help protect children, educate children? Most of them do we already talked a little about it. Most of them do do's and don'ts, tells, expectations. that's one of it. But really, we tie into social emotional learning, which is required in all 50 states as well. And all of that is talk. All the programs out there are talk. Social emotional expectations. This is how you respond. It's like when I'm being emotionally bullied, don't take it. It's not your fault. I'll even give you the best example. When a boy hits a girl in elementary school, oh, only because he liked you. No, that's not true. It could be for a lot of reasons. But the answer to your question, the 2 words answer is personal skills. radKIDS is a educational curriculum that provides personal skills, not standards. Personal skills for a child to recognize, avoid, resist, and if necessary, escape violence, harm, or victimization in their lives. And it actually does it because it's skills. It is not do's and don'ts. It is not all the things we talked about. And the kids are making their own plan. A big part of the program, as you know, is teaching critical thinking skills, but we don't call that the kids. We call radKIDS plan. What is your radKIDS plan to get to school safely? What is your radKIDS plan if you get lost at the Miami football game? What is your radKIDS plan if someone comes up to you and offers you candy? Oh, that was Halloween last night. That may be a little confusing. But basically, what is your radKIDS plan? It allows them to adjust to the circumstances based on those 3 principles. But then you give them the skills all the way up to physical resistance because you can't guarantee anything. And that's really the holistic approach, and the personal skill development is the closest I can still get to got milk. But that's really the big difference, is that when parents see, as you know, you've done even up to simulation where you put the big suit on and the kids take you out, stop you. And so they get the opportunity in radKIDS, which is the only program in the country that teaches them how to stop a bully physically, not fight, stop a bully, and to stop a predator, which is when you wear that big red suit, Joe. So when they stop the predator and they hit you, and they get hit pretty good because they have their own values and a process. And you can never take away from a child the knowledge that they can beat the boogeyman or stop the bad guy, because when they have that, it's the same as hitting a home run in Little League. When I was in Little League, I hit my first home run. I tell everyone it was 545 feet. And anybody who's paying attention goes, that's ridiculous. You were in Little League. I know that's Mickey Mantle's home run. But in my mind, it was 545 feet. The truth is the wind blew it out. But guess what? It was still a home run. It was still my first home run. And no one can ever take away that skill that I learned and that production that was created by me, And that's what radKIDS gives versus all the do's and don'ts and the things. My favorite anecdotal about that, Joe, is I was teaching a gentleman who taught me, you learn, as you know, you learn when you teach, right? So we learn from each other all the time. And I'm kind of educate him, motivate him to get involved. The superintendent made him come. He's a 35-year guidance counselor in Texas. He's sitting in the back of the room like I was teaching police officers with their arms crossed, going, oh, good, another program. Great, can't wait. So I started the process, and, you know, I'm a pretty passionate guy. So he starts writing notes, and I'm like, oh, excellent. I got him. He's writing notes. He's taking notes. He's going to use some of this information. And then we get to introductions later in the day. He goes, my name's so-and-so. I've been I've been a teacher for 35 years, guidance counselor for the last 10. And these are the following programs that I've taken. And he starts listing DARE, support, this, all this other stuff, all these social emotional, character building, I'm going to be a hero, be a superstar pro. He's listing them all. And I'm not, of course, in research, we looked at everything that was there, right? So I'm like, okay, yeah, done that, know that, got that one, yeah, I'm listening to him. But when he finished, he did this. Those are all the programs I've done. And now I'm here in radKIDS. Whoop. And each of his articles. And I went, oh my Lord. I went, well, at least it wasn't passive aggressive. So I was like, okay. So I looked at him and I said, because I don't have a problem with any of that. I understand. And but I did say to him, I said, give me 3 days out of a 40-hour training. Give me the first couple of days, 24 hours. Give me 3 days. And if this isn't for you, go back to the boss and say, that guy's crazy. I'm not doing it. And I'll back you up. I'll tell him.
You are
yes.
crazy.
Call my friend Joe. I'll call my friend Joe, and he'll go, yeah, he's crazy. There's no doubt about it. So that's really not a problem. It was funny. He called my bluff because on the 3rd day, I see him coming at the end of the day. I'm like, uh-oh. And he comes up, and I'm like, this is going to call my bluff. And he goes, Steve, you got a minute? And I said, yeah, what's up? And he goes, I figured it out. And I said, what'd you figure out? Still waiting to say what he had to say. And he goes, this program, radKIDS, is what makes all the other ones work. And I said, yeah, you figured it out, because it's personal skills. It's not expectations. It's opportunities for them to problem solve in a world that's constantly changing in any environment, whether it's home, school, or community. And it's based on making plans in where they live, in their community. So it's not sometimes years ago when in gang intervention, we would take kids from LA and we'd take them up to the mountains in Colorado, and they would freak out over crickets. But you could drive by their house with bullets being laundered, they don't even flinch. So we do adjust to our environment. So we should be teaching our children how to live in their environments and make those environments safer. And if you go back to the 3 rules, if all of us lived in a world where no one had the right to hurt you and you don't have the right to hurt anybody else, it would be a completely different world. It'd be a better world for all of us. And we strive for that through faith. We strive through that for family. But really, we can't just talk it. We need to walk it. And radKIDS lets you walk it.
Awesome. So I'll put you on the spot, and then I'll tell you my favorite part. I just want, and it's hard because it's like, I was asking Daddy, who's your favorite child? But
Yep.
Out of that week long, well, we do it in a week, which is the 10 hours.
Yeah.
What is your favorite part of the program? It's hard, and I know it's hard. You're going to say, I don't have one, everything, but do you have a favorite part of the program?
My favorite part of the program is the paycheck. And what I mean by the paycheck, because there's no money in this, you know that. So, but right. What I mean by the paycheck is when the lights go on. When you see the child, when they see the child go boom, and the 3 principles are not words anymore. They're their boundaries. They're their body armor. They're their suit of protection. Now you have a harder time hurting this child. I'm not saying you can't, but it's just a harder time to hurt this child. And that look is why I do it. And that little girl goes back to the story, Joe. That little girl who said, should have picked somebody else. That's my favorite part of the program. When you see the lights go on, you know that child, and I think parents like that part the best too, is they see power in their own children. So there's really no subject matter, because it really isn't about subject. It's about the child, and the child with the lights going on. It reminds me of the old kindergarten cop movie when, which we used to use to train police officers all the time, and say, when the kid goes up and says, you're not very good at this, you need to get better. I love the honesty of kids, but when they get that power of no one has the right to hurt me and I can stop them. My favorite line is the little girl who said to an instructor in the Midwest years ago, this stuff, can I talk to you after class? And she went up to the teacher. She goes, yes. And she goes, this stuff is really important. I am with myself 24 hours a day. And the teacher, and I'm like, yeah, good point. Good point. Exactly. That's the gift. That's my favorite part.
Yeah. So my favorite part is a lot of the same thing. When you see the light, when you see it click on, I enjoy simulation the last day. And it's not because I'm
that's because you're nuts. That's when they hit you, Joe. That you're not supposed to enjoy that part.
I get hit a little few times. But you know what? It's not because it's like you say, you see it click, that these kids know it's okay to say no to somebody. It's okay to say stay back. It's okay, and they have those tools that they're able to put into play. You don't have to tell them do this, do that. They do it. They know what they're doing because they've been practicing. And you see that transition from the first day when we're trying to teach them just how to stand, the stance, and they're dancing around like little chicken. And you see that last day as you walk up to them, they take that radKIDS stance and they yell out. And then if you grab them, they're able to act and stuff. And seeing them, and when they're done and they're taking off their gear, you see that big smile on their face. Like you said, I did it. Someone didn't have to help me. I did it myself. And you see the parents sitting there, and the parents are looking at you going, wow, my kids did it. I didn't have to jump in and save them. They, there's something they can do themselves.
That's why we're friends, not just because of the radKIDS family. It's because we have the same mission. It's the same. Yeah. This is really a mission to help children and be able, spending all the time we did in our careers in law enforcement. We didn't win all the time. We tried all the time, but we didn't win all the time. And in radKIDS, you can win. As the kids beat you up, it is a favorite part for me to a certain degree. I was joking, as you know, because I like that because it's the home run opportunity, right? It's when they do it, I did it. And they did it, and they took that radKIDS stance, which is their position of power. They made a statement just by getting into a stance, and they finished it by stopping you. And once you can stop the bad guy, there is no bad guy. And that takes fear. And with fear gone, like anything's possible in life without fear.
And it's awesome when we've gone back to a school or something, and we've had kids from last year or something, and they see you, Mr. Joe, and I go, radKIDS stance, and you see like 3 or 4 of them, stop, you're not, they get into their stance, and you're like, man, this is great. It's been a whole year, and they still remember how to do stuff. So
yeah, you're right. That's great, but I think I told you in the training, my favorite thing was, one of my things that drove me a little crazy was I'd be grocery shopping in my community, and all of a sudden I come around a corner and a kid goes, "Step back, you're not my dad." I'm like, not here.
Now everybody's looking at you. Hey,
here comes the store manager. I got to know all the store managers. Luckily, I knew the local law enforcement. But I was like, that's a compliment. But at the same time, everybody else is going, "What's going on?" Right? But it's the greatest compliment in the world for our kids to come to us like that.
Weirdo, aisle 7. So
here you go. Yeah, let's think. You're going to go with us. Wait a minute. Yeah. And I remember another little girl once talking to her mother. Psst, psst, psst. Is that Mr. Steve? Is that Mr. Steve? I think that's Mr. Steve. And I'm like, yes, it's Mr. Steve. And then she gave me a big hug, and I'm like, wow, okay, cool. So yeah, that to me is the paycheck. It's nice if we are able to pay our bills, feed our family, and follow a mission. And I've been very blessed with, as what Oprah called years ago, the purposeful life, right? I've been very blessed with law enforcement was the start of that journey, that pathway, and now what we do in crime prevention, and why I support you and the Florida Crime Prevention Association and everyone I can, because making a difference one child at a time and one person at a time, whether it's seniors, children, whatever, is so important, because we're better for it. All of us are better for it when we help someone else instead of argue with everybody else. So
yeah, very true, very true. So before we wrap it up, I know we've talked a little bit off camera a little bit earlier, and because you're a buddy of mine, you're going to give us a little sneak peek. I don't want you to reveal your whole magic trick here, but tell us about, because you said 25 years, and it's amazing. I congratulate you again, my friend, for doing this for 25 years. I thank you for having the passion to continue past all your years of law enforcement and carrying this on for another 25 years. And I'm sure you just want to relax with your grandkids and just chill back, watch some football on the weekends, and not have to worry about anything, but you still get up every morning and put this program into action. So congratulations on that.
Appreciate it.
But tell us about the future of radKIDS here now. So I know you started about a year ago. Just tell everybody what Safe Start is, a little bit about that, and then a little sneak peek into radKIDS 2.0, what we got coming up.
So we have a curriculum we talked about, and that's radKIDS, the 40-hour instructor training, 8 to 10-hour class like you guys teach it, because you have simulation as well. Covers home safety, school safety, out and about safety, but really all the stuff we talked about. Well, the problem is a lot of people won't commit to a week or 10 hours training. So we developed something called Safe Start, which is an introduction to radKIDS that can be brought to communities. And I know you guys are able to do that at Citizen Crime Watch. So it's a 90-minute presentation to parents and kids, and it's interactive, and it introduces the kids, and they get up and they learn the 3 principles. They start to learn them. They're introduced to them. They get in their stance and yell a little bit, but that's about it. It kind of gets them warmed up and ready to go. And then usually what happens after that is everybody goes, I want the whole course. And so now they're willing to commit. So that was designed to help. Yeah, that was designed to help instructors, because what we do, when you think safety, it goes back to stranger danger for most people. They don't understand what we're doing, and they go, oh, well, it's not that important. But when they can see the difference in that personal skill development, it makes a difference. So Safe Start was started a couple of years ago to try to help instructors build their program, especially after COVID. COVID was very difficult for all of us in lots of ways, and we're going to be paying for that for a long time. But about 8 years ago, we introduced, actually in 2012, so now it's 12 years ago, I moved radKIDS from law enforcement primarily and into education, because that's where the kids are, into the schools. Then I tried to work with SROs, still do. SROs, they do great community programs, law enforcement, community outreach. That's great. But most of the kids are at school, and that's where you can get most of the kids. So I wanted to get it in schools. That's been an interesting challenge, but very, very successful, leading up to the zero victimization school, where we have dropped all the stats. But what that means for everybody is most schools say we don't allow children to be hurt here. And we know that that's not true, because 85% of the time, they don't even see the bullying. We still have bullying. We still have suicide. We still have active shooters. We still have all these problems. So the allowed thing hasn't worked, and it's supposed to have stopped, but it doesn't. So we created a zero victimization, which means no one gets hurt here. And in that model, every child becomes a rad kid, getting the skills so that if you're not there, they have the ability to recognize, avoid, resist, and if necessary, stop someone from hurting them, which covers bullying all the way to active shooting. So that zero victimization philosophy is something we're very proud of. And we just branded that a year ago up in Micanopy, announcing the first school. We have them in 7 states, but we announced the first school that's very holistic, that works. All that, while that's going on, everybody goes, that's great, Steve, but where's your evidence-based scientific data? And I go, how about children's lives? Does that work? Does that count? And they're like, "Arr." So scientists and educators want all the documentation, pre-post rubrics, all that good stuff. I know what all it is, but it takes too long. So about 8 years ago, I started working with a group of scientists so that I could create the longevity for radKIDS beyond my years. And it took us a couple of years, and then we finally recently, in the last 2 years, got a grant from NIMH, National Institute of Minority Health, which allows us to do our 2.0. We call it radKIDS 2.0. And I will share a little bit about that. It is a little bit more structured. Tools have been enhanced because grant money. We were able to do some things. So we shot all the videos again. We upgraded all the art. This is a more modernized version of what radKIDS started, because they're all the original radKIDS are 25 now, so they don't actually fit on the logo anymore. So we had to upgrade the logo a little bit. And so we really modernized the program. The scientists got involved, put their 2 cents, but I wouldn't let them take anything that in my opinion, makes radKIDS work out of it. So we've created a curriculum, and we just introduced it in Alachua County. I hope to bring it to Miami-Dade County, along with you in the future. We're in the second phase of this grant, which means it's the study piece. We have programs running, and we did training in the last 3 weeks in Oregon, Los Angeles, and Florida. So we've got a team out there, and they're going to do 1 lesson a week. It's still a 10-hour program, but it's 30-minute school lessons that are put in 30-minute blocks. There are PowerPoint slides for each lesson where I made you work with a flip chart. There's all sorts of little things that will enhance it. We've increased the teacher aids for you, which you're going to get introduced to at recertification in the upcoming year in just a couple of months. So I will give you one little treat that no one else got, Joe, in a minute, because we are friends. But we've done a great bit of constructive and work in the program to make it go beyond my time. We're training trainers and regional trainers, and you and I have had some conversations about that. After this study is done at the end of this academic school year, then we're going to move into a combination where I'm going to take all those tools and combine it into everything. So all the instructors will have access to everything. And at the same time, focus on development of trainers, because the truth is, I've been blessed a long time, but it's not that I want to retire. It's just that I'm going to need to retire. Can't chase the kids around the room at a certain point. So I'm looking forward to that. But you did ask for a present, so I'll give one to you and anybody who's listening to this. As you know, part of our program is teaching children that 911 is their phone number, not just an emergency number, their phone number when they need help right away, which is an emergency, different mindset to the process, but we actually have them do drills on it. And we were able to use apps in the modern technology on iOS, but Android was difficult. We were using other people's apps. We have developed, part of this initiative, a radKIDS 911 app. It is currently, awesome. And nobody instructors know this except you guys are getting it. They're going to know it in research, but it actually is, for you and your listeners, that 911 app that gives you a tool to work with your child and explain 911 is available in the App Store now, both the Android App Store and the Apple App Store. So it is available to everybody. It's free, so the parents can use it with their kids. And what's really cool about it is we were able to develop it with a interactive component, that most of these apps are very sterile, as you know, because we use different things to try to get the kids to do it. And when we play live operator, it works better, right? Well, this app actually, when it goes 911, what's your location, it won't move until you answer. So it's, even though it's an app, it's almost like live. Yeah. So, and it only does 3 questions, but it basically, what's your location, what's your emergency, and then, we'll be there right away. Stay with someone, stay safe. So it works really well. So now that I told you that, I know you'll go down and look at it. But basically, there's a process. So there's the big secret, because nobody knows that. So there's your big secret, as my friend. So sharing it with your listeners.
I feel special now that you shared it with me. So thank you.
There you go.
But,
there you go.
Steve, man, I appreciate you being out here. You shared so much with us, and I always love spending time with you and talking. And we share the same passions. And again, I just take a moment to thank you for what you do and what you've done for our kids, because we say they are our future. So
yeah, and we're brothers from another mother. I appreciate everything you do, and I really appreciate the compliments. As you know, I don't listen to them very much, but I appreciate the compliments. We are nothing without working together. And for all your listeners, you can get more information at radkids.org.
We'll put that right down here. I always do this. These are my little fingers that I put for my producer to throw our website down here. So that'll.
And the other thing is I'll even give you my email. My direct email is steve@radkids.org. So if anybody listening to this actually wants to reach out, but most importantly, if you're in the Miami-Dade area, then you want to go to Citizens Crime Watch. Now, put your fingers back up, Joe. Put your fingers back up. Citizen Crime Watch, because they actually have people that can help you. I'm happy to share with you. I'm happy to talk with you about whatever we can help you with, opportunity and options. But the real skills can come from Citizens Crime Watch in your area. Miami, there's been a program that's been running a very long time in your area by a mutual friend of ours, Peter Judd, over, and it's the city of what? What city is that again?
Village of Palmetto Bay.
Village of Palmetto Bay. There you go. So the Village of Palmetto Bay has got a great radKIDS program. So again, in your area, those of you listening to this in that area, you can get access to this education, get a hold of them. And what I'd love for all of you to do is, so many of you requested, they don't know what to do with themselves. So that's what I would really love for you to do. Is that would be getting back at Joe for this whole thing a little bit. No,
thank you, my friend. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm happy for you. It's all
job
good.
security for me, right? So.
Absolutely, it's good for you.
All right, buddy. Well, thanks for spending time with me here today. I know you're a busy man, and to get this amount of time from you is golden. And I'm sure it's going to cost. I'll throw you a little steak dinner next time we're together.
Well,
for your
I appreciate you. I appreciate my friend. You don't owe me anything. Everything you do every day, and all the people on the team at Citizens Crime Watch, the whole team, the officers, it's us that make a difference together. I'm happy to share the tool, but we're nothing without each other. And more importantly, our children deserve to be safe. And it's time that we give them the tools they need to live in the world they live in, instead of pretending and hoping it just doesn't blow up on them. And there's, we can talk in the future again about school shootings or anything you want as that process, as you know, but it's teaching the kids that this world can be a really good place, but to do that, they have to feel safe, and we can do much better than we're doing.
Very true. Very true, my friend. Well, you're always welcome here. You're always welcome to come on and chat with us. And when 2.0 is in full effect, I'd love to have you back to talk about it and stuff like that. But
have me back. I'm going to call you guys, and we're going to put it in the school district down in Miami-Dade County. What are you kidding me?
We'll do a podcast on location. So
there you go. Perfect.
I like it. I like it. So, but guys, please, we put those websites there on the bottom. Reach out to us if you're interested in radKIDS. Reach out to Steve if you're outside of Miami-Dade and looking at getting certified. Become an instructor, or seeing what other agencies out there are working. I'm sure he can connect you with somebody. But thank you again, Steve, for being here today. To our listeners, our viewers, like, subscribe, comment, anything you want out there, we'll get back to you. And thank you for joining us. And we'll look forward to seeing you next month. And remember, crime prevention starts with you.